All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be finishing the races in the PHB by looking at humans, which is simultaneously the most simplistic race in the PHB and the most complicated at the same time, which is what simultaneously means. Quick note: stick around till the end of this because I have an announcement. I know I mentioned something about that in the last video and I just forgot, but this time I actually have an announcement because it's I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do next week because due to things happening, I'm going to try something different. So stay tuned to the end, or just skip to the end if you want to, break my heart. And find out what really awesome, cool thing I'm going to be doing next. So, that being said, let's go into the traits of the human in D&D 5th edition. Now, quick refresher on how races work in 5th edition. Every race is going to have an ability score increase. The ability score increase is generally going to be 2 different ability scores. And if there is sub-races for the race, you will get half of it, or one of the ability score increases will be part of the main race, and then the other ability score increase will be part of the sub-race. Humans do not technically have a sub-race, but they have something else that's very, very unique. So all of your ability score increases will be in the quote-unquote base race. In addition to that, you'll have age, alignment, size, speed. We've talked about them ad nauseum. It basically just helps you kind of physically picture what your character is going to look like and kind of their life experience, etc. And then if it has dark vision, that will show up in there. And then the race specific to the traits will show up there. So let's jump into the human. The first thing you get as the human, the ability score increase, is all your ability scores increase by 1. Which means the human actually has the highest point value of ability score increases. Generally, you would increase 1 ability score by 2 and 1 ability score by 1. There's a few that increase 2 ability scores by 2, but maximum you will ever get with a race is generally either +3 across your ability scores or +4, and they have to be shifted to 2 different ones. Humans technically get +6. Every single ability score goes up by 1. Which means when we talk about the quote-unquote perfect class for a human, there isn't one. It doesn't exist because humans are designed to be kind of the catch-all, and that's why they get a +1 to all of their ability scores. It does mean if you're using the base version of the human, you really can play some very unique classes. You can multi-class into multiple MAD classes. If you are unfamiliar with the term MAD, in this context, it means multiple attribute dependent. Things like the rogue, the baseline rogue is a SAD class, single attribute dependent. All the rogue really needs to do the vast majority of what it does is dexterity. However, if you look at the paladin, that's a multiple attribute dependent class. Because it needs strength for its attack rolls and damage rolls, and then it needs charisma for all its casting and spell save DCs. So that's a multiple attribute dependent. And generally, if you're multi-classing, you generally want to multi-class into another class that is going to share the attributes you already have, because trying to have too many different attributes that are really important basically just turns you into kind of a wishy-washy kind of class that doesn't really do anything well. With the human, because they get that +1 to everything, they do have a little bit more flexibility where they can do maybe going with a paladin and then multi-classing into maybe multi-classing into an eldritch fighter, um, an eldritch fighter, or an eldritch knight fighter. There we could go. Because the fighter itself can just use this as strength. However, the Eldritch Knight requires intelligence. So having a paladin that also doubles as an Eldritch Knight fighter will give you a pretty wide swath of different abilities. Some from the Eldritch Knight aspect, some from the fighter aspect, some from the paladin aspect. Basically, almost giving you 3 classes for the price of 2. So humans are really, really good at doing that thing where they kind of dip their toes into those mad and sad classes simultaneously, or they do more than just do a single level or 2 levels in a multi-class, which is really, really common. And it's because of that ability score increase. Everything gets increased by 1. You can do some interesting things. So yeah, nothing too extravagant, but nothing too detrimental to that either. It's a good ability. Age: humans reach adulthood in their late teens and live less than a century. This is what everybody, all the other races are compared to when age is talked about. They live longer than humans, they mature earlier than humans, they mature later than humans. This is what it is, and it's exactly what you would suspect our normal human life to time is. However, humans nowadays do live a few decades longer than humans would live in this is effectively a medieval time where 60 years old for a human, for a person back then, was really old. Now, obviously, with magic and all that stuff, you can argue that humans can get to 60 and 70 years old, 80 years old without too much difficulty, but that's generally where you're going to see them start to end their lives. And definitely the prime, their physical prime is going to be in their 20s to mid 30s. So anyone adventuring in their 40s or 50s are going to have to deal with the fact that they're older and their body's starting to give out a little bit. From a role-playing perspective, there's no mechanical things for that. Alignment doesn't matter. We've said it before. It used to be just a guideline and people got upset, so now ignore alignment. Most people don't understand how alignment works in D&D anyways, so it's a cool word. Size, anywhere from 5 feet to well over 6 feet, but you're a medium-sized creature, and then speed is 35 feet. Humans do not have dark vision built in, and they also don't have any race-specific traits. That ability score increase, where everything increases by 1, is meant to be is meant to make the human very, very easy for a new player to use. They don't have to worry about any of the other racial feats or picking extra cantrips or remembering that they can, pop up from 0 hit points or not hit 0 hit points once or anything like that. They're meant to be a very simple class to play, or race to play, which is why I mentioned this is simultaneously the most simple and the most complex in the entire game. Well, what do you mean it's the most complex? Oh, and the last thing for languages, they can speak, read, and write Common and 1 extra language. So all the other races, they will give you Common and the language that's based on their race. Humans just get Common and any other little language, which again, your mileage will vary as far as how useful extra languages are. But I personally think more languages are always just as useful. So, as I was saying before, how can this be really complex? Like there's nothing there. Well, so humans have something that is unique to humans in the Player's Handbook, and I think is still effectively unique. Or no, tieflings and a couple others. I think the celestial ones that I can't remember off the top. There's a couple others that have it, but none of those show up in the PHB. They don't show up until Tasha's or Xanathar's or things like that, Volos. And that unique aspect is there is a variant version of the human. Now, the variant version is technically an optional rule, meaning if you are just using the base rules of D&D 5th edition, your Dungeon Master may not allow you to use the variant. Mostly because the variant, one of the aspects of the variant, gives you access to another optional rule that most DMs don't treat as optional, but we'll get to that in just a second. So, what does the variant human do? Well, the first thing with the variant human is the ability score changes from +1 to everything to +1 to 2 different ability scores of your choice. So this is very, very different. Mostly because, again, every other race you get a +2 and a +1, but you are told where to put them for everyone except the half-elf. For this, you actually get to choose which ones you want to put them in, so that gives you a lot more control, but it also means you get 1 point less, which isn't, again, a massive deal. It is 1 point. But they have a couple other things that make them remarkably useful. So ability score increase, again, just like before, because you get to choose any class what works for this. If you're using the standard array, I generally will put, wherever I put the 15, that will be one of my ability score increases, and wherever I put the 13, that will be the other one, so that my 3 highest stats are going to be 16, 14, 14, which is really good. That will give you a lot of different things that you can do depending on which stat you put those into. So, the next thing you get is called skills, and you gain proficiency in one skill of your choice. This is where things start getting really interesting. A lot of people kind of undervalue proficiency in skills because it's something that you choose at level 1 and then you never deal with it again. And it's built into your class, and it's built into your background. So again, a lot of people just don't care about skills after our proficiency in skills after level 1 because they already know how their character is going to play right from level 1. These are the skills that I'm proficient in, with a few very, very rare exceptions. What you can do with an additional skill proficiency that is not limited, like your class skills are limited to your class. You can only pick from a small number. Your background, you have to choose, if you're using the background, you have to take those skills. And I do know quite a few people that will actually choose their background based on the skills that it gives to help create the character they want. But if you want to create a character with a specific background, but you're not super, you really needed a different kind of skill, and you don't want to modify them, which there are rules for that, you are a little limited. With a variant human, you aren't. You get to pick whatever skill will be really interesting. And what I tend to recommend with this is don't pick, perception, because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything, or the things like that. That's something that's very, very common for people to do, is just pick some utility type thing, which is fine and it works. But to give you an example, my monk is a shadow monk, and one of the things I've mentioned is there isn't a grappling version of the monk. or at least there wasn't until Tasha's, where they have that weird monk that gets the extra 6 arms. Um, and I think that is a really interesting aspect of martial arts in general. If you have watched any type of mixed martial arts, if you've studied any mixed martial arts, or even just kind of gotten into MMA in general and kind of learned how things go, grappling is an incredibly essential part of mixed martial arts. There are mixed martial artists that were very successful that were primarily strikers, which meant they didn't really do grappling almost at all. They focused entirely on boxing or taekwondo or any of these other martial arts that focus almost entirely on striking, punching, kicking, knees, elbows, things like that. However, striking requires you to be a little bit further away from your opponent. Once they get too close, you can't strike them because you can't get the power behind it if they're right here. And that's where grappling comes in, and that's where the quote-unquote ground game comes in. It's one of the reasons why most mixed martial artists learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it is a grappling martial art, and it is an incredibly well-designed grappling martial art. There's quite a few different ones. I personally studied Aikido. In actual combat situations, Aikido is less useful unless you train it very, very specifically. Judo is another really, really nice grappling martial art, but it's generally done from a standing position. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of the techniques are done from the ground, and it's one of the reasons it's so popular. Going back to the monk in 5th edition, the monk in 5th edition is a striker. Now, this is a striker that gets the ability to, cast fire or, shoot balls of lights out of its hands or, all these other... I mean, it's not exactly like MMA, but grappling is a huge part of martial arts in general. So not being able to grapple as a monk, because the 5th edition rules for grappling is you have to make a strength athletics check opposed by an opponent's either strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics to check. And if you're trying to grapple someone, it always has to be strength athletics, and monks don't use their strength score. They have to have a dexterity score, they have to have a wisdom score, and generally they want a decent constitution because they are a melee fighter, so they just don't have enough points to put anything into strength. Strength is my dump stat for my monk. However, if you use your variant human ability to get proficiency in athletics, it won't matter that you have, or it won't matter as much that you have a really low strength score, because your proficiency bonus will just get higher and higher and higher, to the point where, yeah, you won't be able to out-grapple a barbarian or anything like that, but you will still be able to succeed on a lot of grapple checks, because eventually your proficiency bonus gets up to +6. So compared to a +0 or a -1 to your strength athletics, or a +6, that is a night and day difference. So if I were to play a human monk, I might use my skill proficiency to give me proficiency in athletics, because I can't get that through my monk. And if I wanted to get it through a background, I would have to choose a very specific one. This frees me up to be able to choose any background I want and still be able to grapple. And that is probably the most useful aspect of the variant human. The skills part is the ability to choose a skill that will allow you to play your character extremely differently. Athletics is a really great one, because grappling is such an underutilized as a skill, mostly because it's complicated to use it in 5th edition. And you have to kind of build your character around good grappling to be able to use it a lot. So taking athletics for your skill when your class wouldn't be able to do that is useful. again, if you are going to use wisdom as your dump stat, taking insight for your skill, or taking perception can be very useful. If you want to be a relatively well-read sorcerer, generally sorcerers are not going to have a super high intelligence score. They're going to dump all their stuff into charisma and then constitution for their concentration checks. Maybe dexterity if they're going to do some more melee types of stuff. But they generally won't need intelligence because they're sorcerers. They don't need it. Using your skill to give you one of the intelligence-based skills, investigation or history, can let you play a very different kind of sorcerer. And so that's where that's really going to excel. Now, the final aspect of the variant human is you get a feat. Now, I have mentioned feats many times. I have an entire series I did on feats. I did the new feats into Tatasha's. Feats are a big deal in 5th edition. In earlier editions, 3rd edition is where you first found feats. 4th edition, they had feats as well. Feats were just the small little incremental things that you got basically every other level. They might give you a +1 to an attack roll, or they might reduce a penalty for something, but they were these small incremental steps that you got as you leveled up and made your level ups that much nicer every other level. With 5th edition feats are designed to be game changing. They're designed to vastly change how you play your character. And they're designed to give you a lot of different options. Now, the first time you can pick up a feat for any class is level 4. So you don't get your first feat until you are almost done with your tier 1 adventuring. And getting ready to get into tier 2 and 3rd level spells and all those crazy things there. With a variant human, you get it from level 1, which can make some very interesting situations. To give you an example, something we used to see in the Adventures League, and it used to piss off a couple of DMs I knew. I never had a real problem with it, but it could be an annoying. Is you would take a human, they would make a human barbarian, they'd use the variant, and they would take great weapon for fighting. If you're not familiar with great weapon for fighter, what it does is it allows you to take a -5 to your attack roll, and if you hit, you do +10 damage on that attack roll. And it only works with weapons that have the heavy property, which are exclusively two-handed weapons. You would see variant human barbarians that would take the great weapon for fighter, and at level 1, they could do over 20 points of damage in a single swing, which was enough to one-shot just about any monster you would deal with. Even the really tough monsters you would deal with at level 1 and level 2 for the introductory adventures in the Adventures League, you could one-shot any of them with a single hit. And because you were such a low level, you generally didn't have to roll any, ACs were generally not any higher than about 13 or 14. So having a feat like that, or sharpshooter was the other one. You take a human variant ranger and they'd go sharpshooter. Having the -5 was not going to make a massive difference, because at that point you would just be rolling flat. Your attack bonus for your weapon would be +5. You would get a -5, which meant you only had to roll, a 12 or a 13 on the D20, which is still a 40% chance of success to be able to hit. And if you could get advantage on it for whatever reason, you would be golden and you would do crap tons of damage. Other things that could really change your low-level aspects were things like the dual wielder feat, which allows you to dual wield weapons that don't have the light property. Normally, if you're dual wielding at level 1, the most damage you can do is 1 D6 because the most powerful light weapons are all going to be D6s. With the dual wielder, that moves up to a D8 if you're dual wielding long swords or anything like that, and that changes the things. I know it's only one die, but when you're getting to make multiple attacks at level 1, every die changes things. And if you choose the fighter, who I'm totally blanking on this right now, so I'm going to look it up before I say the wrong thing. Fighters at level 1 get to choose a fighting style, which if they choose 2-weapon fighting, it means that their offhand attack gets to add their ability modifier to the damage. Normally you can't. So having a fighter, a first level human variant fighter with the dual wielder feat, you can do some pretty excellent damage right from level 1. Effectively, you're going to have 2D. If you do double long swords and you're strength based, you're going to be 2d8s plus 6 damage every turn, without any sort of wasting of resources or anything. That is just what you can do, and it just gets better from there. So those feats that you take right at first level can vastly change how you play your character. Now, you don't just have to do that. Again, there are feats that give you ability score improvements as well. So remember, we only have 2 ability scores we can improve by 1 with the human variant. Well, if you choose something like which one was it? Like durable. Durable lets you add +1 to your Constitution modifier, or Fey Touched lets you add 1 to your Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma modifier. Plus, you learn Misty Step and a first level spell of your choice at level 1. So again, this variant human can be incredibly useful. And again, you can like double dip. Like, let's say you're a variant human wizard and you take the Fey Touch, so you can get your Misty Step, and you can also get another first level spell, so that you can just do more spell casting. Yeah, that's cool. But what if you do something like a monk? That's Fey Touched. Now you have a monk that can teleport without having to wait till level 6 for the Shadow Monk Shadow Step, and not having the limitation of needing shadows to be able to step into. You can do some really interesting things depending on the feats that you take. So again, this goes from the simplest race, where you just get +1 to everything and that's it, to the most complicated, where you get to choose a skill from anywhere, and you get to choose a feat right at level 1. And there really isn't a bad choice as far as feats go. I mean, you theoretically could choose something like, a proficiency feat that doesn't give you additional proficiency. Like, if you tried, you could choose a bad feat. But in general, there are so many different interesting things you could do by choosing the right feat. And there are so many weird, unique combinations of classes and feats. And because this is just an extra feat, when you get to 4, you're still going to be able to choose another feat or ability score improvement. So this is just on top of everything else you get to do with your character. So yeah, really interesting, really fun. Go crazy. Anyway, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell icon, turn notifications on in the comments down below. Tell me, what is the most weird first level feat class combo you can come up with for that variant human? Put that in the comments down below. Now, I mentioned there was going to be an announcement. Well, the whole reason I have been doing, thank you. The whole reason I have been doing this has been to be able to talk about the new lineages in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and I still intend to do that. However, there has been some shakeups in the world of MMORPGs. Now, why would I be to talk about MMOs? This is tabletop. Well, I've been playing MMOs since EverQuest. Since I was in like the 7th or 8th grade, I've been playing MMOs. I'm a huge fan. I played Vanilla WoW. If you don't know what that means, doesn't matter. I've played Final Fantasy XIV since A Realm Reborn. Currently, now I play Final Fantasy XIV. I play Elder Scrolls Online, and a couple other ones that I dabble in every so often. Well, why does this matter? Well, recently, Final Fantasy, the most popular MMO for decades, for over a decade at this point, has been World of Warcraft. They've had more subscribers, more active players than any other MMO. But Final Fantasy XIV has been catching up, and just recently, Final Fantasy XIV has eclipsed WoW itself as the most active played MMO. And Final Fantasy XIV is getting a ton of press, and there's all this drama around it. Well, I found something really, really cool a long time ago, to be honest. And I have to bring it up here so I can remember what it's called. A long time ago, I found this thing where someone had gone and thank you for the phone. Someone had gone and taken the classes from Final Fantasy XIV and translated them into 5th edition to the D&D. And when I first looked at it, years and years and years ago, it was broken pretty bad. If you were just using those classes and not using any of the base classes, it was fine because they were balanced with each other. But comparing them to the regular classes didn't work. Well, a lot of updates to that have happened. And so starting next Monday, I'm going to be going through the Final Fantasy XIV D&D class compendium. And I'm going to be going over all the different classes in there and talking about them because they're actually relatively well balanced with the base D&D classes. There's still some stuff that needs to be kind of modified into the things like that. This is entirely homebrew. You will never see this on D&D Beyond. Square Enix is not approved of this or anything like that. So this is not, this is nothing official. But it is really, really interesting and fun. And it expands so much as far as what you can play and what you can do. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go through all of them to give you guys an idea of how many different classes. And each class in here is also going to have 2 or 3 subclasses in it. So this is a lot. The classes are Arcanist, Astrologian, Black Mage, Blue Mage, the Dancer, Dark Knight, Dragoon, Gunbreaker, Machinist, Red Mage, Samurai, Warrior, and White Mage. They also have archetypes or subclasses for the classes that already exist in D&D to make them play a little bit more like their Final Fantasy XIV versions. So they have the College of the Skysinger Bard. They have the Way of Rhalgr Monk, the Oath of the Sultan Sworn Paladin, and the Ninja Rogue. So all of these are their own separate classes, except for those subclasses I mentioned. I'm going to go through all of them. And you guys are going to get to see something really interesting. Like I said, this is all homebrew stuff, and it's done by, it's either one person or it's a couple really small people. So this is not like a huge team, but they have every single class from Final Fantasy XIV in there. And there's 2 new classes showing up in the new expansion that comes out in November, and they're already coming up with ideas on how to add those 2 classes into this. It is constantly being updated. It is by far one of the coolest things I have ever seen. So that is the big announcement. Starting Monday, we are going to start a brand new set of classes based on Final Fantasy XIV. Call this the D&D Final Fantasy XIV crossover, D&D deep dive, whatever. And yeah, so tune in on Monday. I'm not going to tell you the first class I'm going to do, but I will tell you, if you guys know me in Final Fantasy XIV, we are going with my main class in Final Fantasy XIV, which may surprise you. So yeah. Anyway, again, that's all for me. Check this out on Monday, and I will see you guys then. All right? Bye-bye.